It's insane. And Will, who's based in Raleigh, he went scorched earth over at CBS Sports. I encourage y'all to read the article at CBS. Again, Reich fired by the Panthers, but Carolina's owner, David Tepper, remains the bigger issue. So we're going to get to that and also some plays as the NFL continues. But let's start here, and then we'll jump into the drama. You have a choice on Justin Fields. You're the Bears front office. What are you going to do? Again, you got to pay him. If you draft one of the rookie quarterbacks, they're coming in on a rookie deal that's advantageous, but I want to know what you would do.
Well, I think it depends a lot on where your picks end up being. Obviously the win over the Vikings moves the Bears. I think they have the fourth pick, and of course the first pick coming from the Panthers. So let's say you have the first pick and the fourth pick, if the draft ended where it does today, and we actually just talked about this on my podcast with Pete Prisco. Pick Six Podcast. You can check it out, subscribe where you get your podcast. But I think there's a chance you could pull off a trade down with like New England. It depends on whether Belichick's there too. Like if you can pull that off, right? There's a lot in flux here, or maybe even Washington, and you could pick up a bunch of extra draft capital while keeping Justin Fields, adding maybe an offensive lineman, and picking up Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that would probably be the ideal situation in terms of building the best roster you could possibly get. I think the issue is, guys, I'm not sold on Justin Fields. I think you can see some signs that he can thrive in the pocket. You probably have to, Luke Getsy and this offensive team, like the offensive coordinator and everybody, the coaching staff, it's like they don't bother accentuating what Justin Fields does well until they're like 1-5. They're like, maybe we should let Fields run. Maybe we should design some runs for Justin Fields. Like that should be built into the game plan every single week. And I would hire a coach who wants to do that if you keep Fields. I think the other problem is Caleb Williams and Drake May. I mean, they're not guaranteed to be great quarterbacks in the NFL. Caleb Williams, I know, is like supposed to be this unbelievable prospect. He's had his ups and downs this year, and that always happens when you have the Heisman hype that he got from last season. Drake May hadn't beaten a good defense in his career at Carolina, and I say that enthusiastically because my NC State Wolfpack smoked Carolina on Saturday in Raleigh. But I think right now I'd be leaning towards Fields, but I didn't think I would say that because I didn't love Fields coming out. I'm hesitant to dive right back in when you could possibly put enough around Fields where you had Marvin Harrison Jr. and then with DJ Moore. And you feel like you got something you can really cook with at if Fields develops at all.
I like that point you made there, but overall, just from you've broken it down very well. But what is your gut feeling the Bears do? Because the one thing Patrick pointed out is you've got a new regime there, and I think Ryan Poles ends up taking his own guy. He didn't draft Justin Fields, and it resets the clock on the contract. We talked about it earlier on the rookie deal. Is that what they probably end up doing? Whether it's the right move or not, we'll see. But it seems like the move that teams make.
Yeah, the reset the clock thing. The other thing it does is when you take over as a GM, you have two clocks that start when you first take over. You have the quarterback clock and you have the coaching clock. And now you can hit the reset button on the coaching clock usually once and get a second chance at a coach. You can't do it with the quarterback, right? You get one shot at the quarterback. So I think it's really interesting here. If you're Ryan Poles and you think that you can't win with Justin Fields, and you feel like there's a chance Matt Eberflus gets fired after this year, which there still very much is, you could hit the reset button on the coach situation, bring in an offensive guy, and also hit the reset button on the quarterback situation at the same time, and that can potentially extend the livelihood that you get because you're pairing that coach and that quarterback. So I would say yes. I think it's more likely that they take another quarterback because of the salary reset and the timeline reset for Ryan Poles. It extends his livelihood as GM because he's finally got his own guy.
Our buddy Will Brinson, you heard it, the Pick Six podcast, CBS Sports. Go check out the article about Frank Reich being fired. So let's just start at a very basic place. Do you believe Frank Reich was the right head coach for the Carolina Panthers moving forward?
Moving forward, no, I don't think so. I definitely did before the season. I thought Frank Reich was a great hire. I'm a big Frank Reich guy. He won a Super Bowl with the Eagles as the coordinator, of course. I thought he got a raw deal in Indianapolis. I mean, he had Andrew Luck retires. He makes it work with like Jacoby Brissett. Maybe it's because he's only had NC State quarterbacks. I may be a little biased there. He had Phillip Rivers, of course. The thing that did him in Indy was that he really hammered the table and said, we got to trade for Carson Wentz. Wentz cost them a shot at the playoffs in that Week 18 game. Irsay hated him for it and held grudge against Frank Reich. I think hearing what we've heard the last couple of days, reading between the lines, listening to people around the league, and sort of, look at like what's happened with the way that they've handled this coaching staff post-Reich, right? Frank Reich gets fired, and they promote the special teams coordinator to head coach. They keep Thomas Brown as the offensive coordinator. Jim Caldwell becomes a special assistant to the offensive coordinator. What the hell is that? I've never even heard of that. You ever heard of somebody? It's like the offensive coordinator now has like a babysitter. Like you just gave him like Jim Caldwell's like a babysitter. Like what's the thing? He's a special assistant to the offensive coordinator. That's insulting. And then the new coach fires Deuce Staley and Josh McCown. Josh McCown's first stint in the NFL as a coach. And you saw his agent, Mike McCartney, tweet out. He's like, weird day in the business for sure. That's all I'll say. I think what happened was, and Joe Person of the Athletics did a good job talking about this. It's sort of floating under the radar. Right comes in. They also add Thomas Brown. Thomas Brown apparently they were attempting to meld Reich's offense with a bunch of stuff from Thomas Brown's time with the Rams and Sean McVay. And that's really hard to do if you have like a veteran quarterback who with a good offensive line and weapons who he's familiar with timing wise and who have explosion down the field. Well, the Panthers have a terrible offensive line. They're probably there's a lot more of this zone blocking stuff they're trying to do, and they have this mauling like downhill running team that they need to utilize more. They have zero vertical explosion whatsoever. Adam Thielen's their best wide receiver. He's a good 3, a really good 3. He is not a number 1. You heard the Titans talk about it. Mike Vrabel said 30% of his targets were on third down because they just Bryce Young locks in on him, so they just took him away, and the Panthers can't convert anything. And then you have this rookie quarterback who's behind a bad offensive line with no weapons, trying to learn this melded system that even the coaching staff isn't really on board with. And I think some factions may have developed in that coaching staff, this all-star staff with 200 years, where everybody's a little proud, and maybe everybody's been around for a while. And you see when Reich gets fired, the loyalists, and this happened last year with Matt Rule. Steve Wilkes fired Phil Snow and a bunch of other dudes because they were Matt Rule guys. The Reich loyalists got fired, and you sort of wonder and Reich now is saying that he's probably done in the NFL. So he may have been checked out for a month for all we know. And I don't know. It's a total disaster down there. I definitely think he wasn't the right guy moving forward, but I don't think it's because he didn't love it. I think it's because he just knew he was getting fired a month ago because David Tepper put an ultimatum on his job.
I'm sorry, Mo. Let me just say this. Will Brinson, this is all alleged. So don't worry. It's not on the record. What dirt are you hearing potentially within that staff?
Well, Prisco said, I can quote Prisco and then get away with anything I want, right? So
there you go.
Pete said that somebody told him, he said this on the podcast, but he said somebody told him that it was like the staff is like a bunch of gym teachers. Which
got it.
It's like, you're like, what? And then you're like, oh, you mean like old, like crusty dudes in like short shorts, blowing whistles and sort of kind of phoning it in and like yelling like, hey, what are you doing, Smith? Fly the rope. I think that's sort of like the comments from Frank Reich are stunning to me because this is a guy who, and I think a lot of times coaches, it would behoove them when they get fired from a job, even though he took a half season off, take a year off and recharge. Mike McCarthy, we made fun of him. Everybody made fun of him for the analytics. Like, I went PFF for a day, and now I'm a smart analytics guy. We all made fun of him for it, but he got a year off. He recharged his batteries. You can see he came back better. Like Rex Ryan jumped straight from AFC East to AFC East, and it didn't last long. And I think Frank Reich probably burned out to the point where he may not want to coach again. Pretty crazy.
Well, when you look at Bryce Young, what was your thoughts about him coming into the draft, the general consensus, and then based on 10, 11 weeks so far, he's still a rookie, but if people kind of downgrade him a little bit, or just the fact that you pointed out earlier? I mean, he doesn't really have. You got Chark, you've got Mingo, Adam Thielen, you mentioned a number 3 at 33 years old. He doesn't have a ton around him.
He's got nothing around him. Yeah. I mean, every week their longest play is like 11 yards. They can't protect long enough. And my boy Ike Ekwonu, I mean, look, I love him, but hadn't been great in pass protection. They can't protect him long enough for him to throw downfield. If guys could even get open downfield, it was supposed to be sort of this point guard, quick hitting distribution style system. And it just hadn't been that. I think if you flip Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, it'd be closer to even than it is right now in terms of the record and the numbers. I don't think CJ Stroud would be minus 10,000 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. And I don't think the bust word would be coming out for Bryce. You know what I mean? Like, I think people would be questioning CJ Stroud because it's hard to win with what Carolina has. And I think people would be like, all right, Bryce Young kind of, yeah, I think he might have it, but he definitely looks lost. I mean, he looks completely in over his head right now. And CJ, and by the way, the CJ, I like Bryce coming in, so I had him as the number one quarterback. CJ Stroud being awesome, and the Panthers likely giving up the number one pick next year, definitely played a factor in David Tepper's growing impatience and unwillingness to like let Frank Reich try to fix this thing.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.